current system makes sense for what's in the interest of the party leaders. We need a system that makes sense for the people of Pennsylvania.
The reason that Pennsylvania voices are too often overlooked is because legislators know voters aren't able to hold them accountable at the ballot box.
But gerrymandering is everything. It is everything, because the system that we have now is a block on democracy. It's a block on effective government.
One of the great strengths of our effort and our movement is we are an all-volunteer grassroots movement active across the entire state with an amazing wealth of backgrounds, abilities, contacts, and resources.
Most Republicans and Democrats really believe that the core of this issue is unfair. And so this is something we can really do. We can really change and make our elections fair again.
I'm from Beaver County, and I am an avid volunteer for Fair Districts. This is my 4th trip to Harrisburg.
I've been concerned about the partisan divide in the United States for a long time.
Partisan gerrymandering is destroying our democracy.
I want my voice, my vote, your vote to count.
I've been a Fair Districts volunteer since 2016.
I've been involved with Fair Districts for about 3 years now.
I'm an independent and I'm working for Fair Districts to increase competition and decrease corruption and gridlock.
Participation is critical, and I don't get a pass just because I'm retired.
As a relative novice to the political way of doing things, I've had the experience of talking with a couple legislators and of course many FDPA people. Really enjoyed and appreciated getting to know more about how things work.
I volunteer in a few different roles for Fair Districts PA. First, I'm the coordinator of the Luzerne County local chapter, the Northeast PA regional coordinator. I also help coordinate municipal resolutions statewide and am part of the Fair Districts Advocacy Advisor team. As you can see, I'm all in, and I will continue to be until our mission has been accomplished.
I'm a lifelong Republican.
And I'm a Democrat.
We are the bipartisan duo from Tioga County.
I didn't become a citizen until 2014. And that was a really serious decision for me because the oath that you take, the oath of allegiance to the United States, is a deadly serious oath.
I became involved with Fair Districts when I looked at a map of the districts. They were divided, the counties and the cities. They had all these irregular sizes and shapes. With this kind of distribution, how can the needs of the people be met?
Voters should choose their representatives. Representatives should not choose their voters.
When I look at that oath and I look at how gerrymandering has disenfranchised voters across our state, I take my oath pretty seriously and I got to work. I'm working for Fair Districts because gerrymandering means that not every citizen in our state has a voice that can be heard.
Gerrymandering is killing our democracy. I've been an active volunteer since 2017. This has been by far the easiest cause for me to get behind, work hard for, and feel passionate about, because until this changes, nothing changes.
Gerrymandering has been a problem in Pennsylvania for at least the last 3 decades. New mapping and data technologies have made it possible for politicians to choose their voters with surgical precision. Voters from across the state and across the political spectrum are pushing back. Since Fair Districts PA began in January of 2016, volunteer speakers have shared information at over 900 public meetings, attended by over 30,000 Pennsylvanians. Over 350 municipalities and 23 counties have passed resolutions in support of an independent redistricting commission. Hundreds of volunteers have collected over 100,000 petition signatures. Volunteers have met with legislators in all corners of the state, gaining more co-sponsors for sponsored bills than any other bills introduced in the past 2 legislative sessions. This is the last of a 6-part series provided by Fair Districts PA, a nonpartisan coalition of organizations and individuals working to ensure fair districts and fair elections for all Pennsylvanians. Fair Districts PA is a fiscal project of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania and an active participant in the League of Women Voters People-Powered Fair Maps Initiative.
We are going to sing a song because we are a grassroots movement, and every grassroots movement since the beginning of time has had music. Gerrymandered voting districts are a form of cheating. Politicians must reform or they will take a beating. Gerrymander has to go. This is now worth noting. We need fairer districts now so we can have fair voting.
mightily against unfair redistricting, engaged their representatives and senators, provided testimonials, and waged court challenges. As constituents, they no longer wish to sit back as politicians manipulate district lines and cherry pick certain voters right down to our townships, wards, and blocks of residence.
Now, when I started on this, I called a lot of people. I called people who've been involved in this kind of reform in other states. I talked to people who have built coalitions. I talked to some legislators. I talked to some redistricting analysts. And the conversation always went kind of the same. It was, this is a really important topic. This would change everything in Pennsylvania. And then there'd be a pause, and they'd say, but reform is not possible in Pennsylvania. Reform is not possible in Pennsylvania. And I have to say, I'm with the League of Women Voters, and we were told women will never get the vote. And told that for many decades. And for 50 years, the League of Women Voters worked to get the vote, and they did get the vote.
It was not easy to see a solution for this anti-democratic crisis that contributed so dramatically to the extremism, the polarization, the hopelessness that plague our politics. None of that stopped you. I watched on social media as lines grew around the block on cold winter evenings for fair district events. I read the hundreds of letters to the editor you publish across the state, watched citizens master the intricacies of the legislative process in a state where insiders like to operate behind closed doors, marveled as you collected more sponsors for fair redistricting than any other bill before this Capitol. You, every single one of you, made the state's entrenched political elite tremble.
Here's the one positive note in all this. I attended a gathering at a Bethlehem church in September 2016 that drew about 90 people and introduced me to Fair Districts PA and this new effort to finally push redistricting reform through. The energy in that room that night was exciting, and I was even more excited when I attended a similar rally about 5 months later in an Allentown church that drew more than 400 people, including a lot of people who really wanted to know how they could get involved. I saw them meeting in small groups afterward talking about that, which was really great. And that grassroots momentum has continued to build, culminating in an exhilarating rally last April in the Capitol Rotunda, new maps for this congressional election, and as close as we've ever come, I think, to the legislative victory that reformers have been dreaming of for so long.
I have been really thankful for the statewide grassroots movement that represents Fair Districts Pennsylvania. 40,000 people across Pennsylvania, 26,000 people attending a meeting in person to talk about redistricting reform. I've attended meetings in the Lehigh Valley with 400 people, 125 people, 75 people coming out on a Wednesday night in the middle of July. This is one of the most extraordinary grassroots movements I've ever seen in Pennsylvania.
This is the next American revolution. It is a demand for fairness, the insistence that our vote is our voice, that our district lines are the very building blocks of democracy. It is grounded in the belief that our leaders are temporary, but the people rule.
This week is the 51st anniversary of my going to South Vietnam. I was a combat infantryman in South Vietnam. 51 years ago, I was 19. I'll pause here while you do the math. That's right. We no need to dwell on that. When I was in Vietnam as a combat infantryman, I saw young men die for this country. And I can't tell you what they thought that sacrifice was, the reason for that sacrifice. But I can tell you, I can guarantee you this, not one of them in Vietnam that gave their lives for this country, or in Korea, World War II, World War I, no one has ever given their life to make one district safe for one political party or another. Never.
I think the representatives in the state senators have to understand that they are our employees and not vice versa.
It is about holding our officials accountable to a higher good, even if they come kicking and screaming. That winning elections and maintaining partisan control is never as important as ensuring that our institutions are strong, that our elections are meaningful, that our votes count.
Because voting rights are for the people.
I've been a Republican for about 60-some-odd years now.
I say that in particular because I think so often that this issue about gerrymandering, it tends to be interpreted as a political issue. Really what it is, I think, it's a citizens issue.
I don't know anybody who wakes up in the morning and says, gerrymandering, that's my thing. But we all have things that we care about. And it's really, really important for us to realize that the things that we care about, we can't fix if we don't have a functional democracy.
It really doesn't matter what color your opinion is if your representative has no incentive to listen to you.
Change in the Pennsylvania political scene is not just possible. At this time, it is inevitable. We need to listen carefully, we need to share what we know, and we need to insist on polite, informed, persistent dialogue with people across the political spectrum and with our legislators and elected officials.
I was in the legislature for 27 years, going back to the late 70s. I know what frustration is all about when it comes to reform. And this is coming from somebody who about 28 years ago was on the Reapportionment Commission and saw almost no interest in what was going on with redistricting and reapportionment. And to see the change now, people in sheer numbers like that, turning out in church basements, in the State Museum auditorium, showing up in libraries all over this state. It's not just the sheer numbers, it's the moral persuasion. Whenever you stand for what is fair, for what is right, that's still, even today, whenever our democracy is at risk, that still is ultimately powerful, and you have embodied that today.
I represented Indiana County in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, and every session, I and a group of co-sponsors introduced legislation that would have put Pennsylvania on the Iowa plan with independent, nonpartisan redistricting processes. Well, we didn't get anywhere. And part of the reason that we didn't get anywhere was because we did not have the kind of organization that Fair Districts has brought into being. The statewide, grassroots, widespread participation that we need desperately to change our broken system.
There have been some rallies that filled up the first floor. There have been a few that had people on the second floor. I don't know if I've ever been at a rally where folks were up on the fourth floor lending their voice.
We've gathered in Harrisburg. We had one of the largest rallies in recent memory in Harrisburg last April with around 700 people in the rotunda. It was a wonderful opportunity to say, this place belongs to us. And that's what we want to remember. Our government belongs to us. Harrisburg, the capital, belongs to us.
You outnumber them arithmetically, and you outnumber them in terms of moral persuasion. And if we can hold to that, eventually, we will win on these issues.
The truth is, to change this is a long process and will require really engaged and informed citizens. This will not change overnight by just signing a petition. That's not going to happen. It's a long process, and you need to be more informed than your legislators. Many of them are not going to read a bill unless you go and explain the bill. And they're not going to even think about this topic unless you go and show them a map and say, look at this map, look at what this does to us here, and here's why we want you to fix it. So how can you help? Getting people to sign a petition. We've had people do that at polling places. Also, we have people who do this in their own communities. We have people in senior communities who've just circulated petitions and gathered hundreds of names for us in those communities or on college campuses.
I suggest all of the time that you actually go sit down with your representative. They work for you, not the other way around. And you know, if you ask for a meeting and they don't give you a meeting, I would write a letter to the editor. And I would call a reporter and say, why is it that, you know, I've tried to get a meeting with my representative and he or she refuses to do that. I think it's a story in and of itself. If 5 or 6 or 10 of you asked your representative for a meeting, it's a little harder to say no to, isn't it? So that's one way you can coalesce. You can figure out from the membership of the organization, I'm sure they can find out who in their municipality, who in their district, right? Is interested in this issue and a member of this organization, and you can get together and you can contact each other and say, let's write a letter and all sign it and hand deliver it. Walk into the district office and say, here's a letter from 10 people in your district. We'd like a meeting on this subject. Please tell us when we can have it.
Hundreds of visits with legislators
simply to go and say, this is why this matters to us. This is what we'd like you to do. And we've heard back from legislators who say, your folks are really informed, really polite, and really persistent. And that's what we want to be. We want to be informed, we want to be polite, but we want to say, we do expect you to answer us. And so if we come to you and you have a question, we will come back with the answer. And we want you to support this.
Any community you belong to, you can request a speaker like this. And it doesn't matter what the size of your community is. I swear I've spoken in front of one person more than one time.
Help get the word out by writing a letter or op-ed to your local newspaper. Every piece of media coverage helps new people hear about the issue. Lastly, never give up. Don't stop, live it, educate others, engage in social media, volunteer, get creative, and have fun. If we all do a small part and work together, our voices can be heard and our freedom to vote in the state of Pennsylvania can be restored.
You can join Fair Districts PA if you have more time to volunteer, if you would like to be more involved. We need all sorts of skills and talents. But there are people working on maps, on legislation, people coming to support speakers. They have postcards and know who to send them to. So whatever your skill might be, there'll be a use for it. So if you're interested, please join us.
The objective is to have all of these expressions of support so that it counters the natural tendency of the party leaders in Harrisburg, who after all are the only ones with something to lose in this process. What we want to do is make sure that the voters are heard and that the party leaders know that their time is up on this one.
In Ohio, the Ohio Manufacturers Association and the AFL-CIO, often on opposite ends of the political spectrum, agreed that redistricting is harming the state. So together, they came out with a joint endorsement of a redistricting reform measure. Business leaders in Virginia, Maryland, and DC said the government shutdown is an economic disaster for our region. And the thing that drives something like the government shutdown is partisan divide. And we've got to end it. And they said the best way to end it is to have independent redistricting commissions to end gerrymandering, so we move back towards the middle.
In the same way companies capture markets through monopolies, politicians sometimes attempt to eliminate any true competition in the marketplace of ideas by gerrymandering. Business for America is committed to partnering with Fair Districts PA, and we pledge our support for its efforts in changing the redistricting process in Pennsylvania. Business knows that a more open and competitive political process brought about by fair districting will reduce hyperpartisanship, and that's likely to incentivize policymakers in Harrisburg to work together to address key issues like improving our infrastructure, education, and environmental quality.
I have never in my life seen democracy at work like it is here today, and I cannot be prouder of the fact that little rural Clinton County, of a population of less than 40,000, got this right by having all 29 of our municipalities sign a resolution to support fair districts. And I cannot be prouder to be a part of it, and I'm a Republican.
And I'm proud to note that my county, Cumberland County, through a unanimous vote of my commissioner colleagues and I, became the very first county in Pennsylvania to support the reform needed to extricate the politicians from choosing their voters.
We encourage our legislators across this Commonwealth and across both political lines to take action now.
And maybe people will just get sick of the partisan divide, and we may be at that moment in this country where it's so deep that some people see the need to calm things down and see the need to maybe buy into the concept of fair districting being something that is not a partisan thing. It is a fair thing to do. It is an objectively good thing to do. Right now, many of us don't feel that unity with the nation. And that's not healthy, because on some other political moment, someone else will feel outside the system. So if we want to be part of the system, let's create a system that invites us all.
We wouldn't let the football teams one-up each other with dirty tricks, but we let our politicians do that. And I've yet to figure out why we tolerate that, why it's something that's commonly done. We have a lot more in common with each other, and if we can drop the labels, if we can drop a lot of the ideology, this is a problem which needs to be addressed with visionary action, with bold action. And I can point directly to the gridlock and the way our government sets itself up. And those are not the people who are equipped to handle the real problem which is right in front of us.
Democracy is a fragile thing and it must be protected. And in the words of President Ronald Reagan, here it goes. He said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for and protected and then handed on to our children for them to do the same."
One last thing. This is a really important moment in our democracy. This is one of those moments where we all need to lean in. I mean, there are times when it's perfectly fine to hang out in the hammock in your backyard, and there's times when the house is on fire and you really need to get up and do something. This is one of those times when the house is on fire and we all need to get up and we all need to do something.
This is no time to celebrate. This is no time to rest. The work that remains will get difficult. Opponents are not discouraged. Far too many politicians are willing to turn democracy itself into a political football. Frederick Douglass said that power concedes nothing without a demand that the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. So we are going to have to roll up our sleeves and work even harder.
What we want to do is eliminate gerrymandering to the benefit of all of us, because gerrymandering hurts all of us.
Your voices are being heard, and it's scaring some of the lawmakers. Some of the House members, Senate members, like, what do we do about fair districts? They're all over the place. They're calling us. They are. Good job. You got their attention.
There's a picture on the internet of a meeting that Carol attended in Philadelphia with 800 people coming out to talk about redistricting. There's wonderful turnout tonight. There's been meetings in Montgomery County, 700 people. People are fired up all across the state. The citizens have to let their legislators know this is important, and then we have to change this process, and we have to change our Constitution in time for the 2021 census. If we do, the next time we draw districts, it'll be with an independent redistricting commission.
If we don't pull this off, we get 10 more years of crazy redistricting.
There's great frustration in this. There's a lot of work. You need patience. You need persistence. When you go to meet with legislators, you need to be able to hear them and then come back with the next thing and then go back again. Find out what their questions are, go research the questions, and go back again. I've been told it's impossible, and then I've been told it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift.
What I want to do is renew your faith that your hard work and collective fight can fix it. Some energy and courage and passion. You need to vigorously pursue this fight because Pennsylvania needs you, because this nation needs you.
The next year or two will shape Pennsylvania's future, but it will also, in many ways, shape the political discourse in other states that are watching us. We need to be asking everyone we know. We need to be crying out in the streets and the schools, a place we can think of in our churches and our civic groups. We need to be inviting people to engage and invest in a future that works for all of us.
Our system still hasn't been reformed, but I'm convinced that the visibility of this issue finally is gained around the state, and the continuing vigilance of Fair Districts PA and other reform groups is at the very least going to force the party leaders to be less brazen when it comes to redraw districts again in 2021. That throng of people who filled the rotunda, right 4 floors up, covering all the spaces, hanging over the rafters, and saying, we need to change this.
The people have the right to alter and reform. The people have the right to alter and reform.
I know that until this changes, nothing changes.
I know that until this changes, nothing changes.
We want a government that works and that works together.
I know that nothing changes until this changes.
Until this changes, nothing will change.
I know that until this changes,
nothing changes.
Not red, not blue, just fair.
Not red, not blue.
Just fair.
Not red,
Not blue.
Just fair. Not red, not blue, just fair.
not red, not blue, just fair.
Not red, not blue, just fair.
As Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it's done. And we're going to get this done.
Voting rights are for the people, for perfect union.
Not red, not blue, just fair.
The fight for fair districts and fair elections continues. Find out the latest about legislative strategy and how you can help at fairdistrictspa.com and sign the petition for change.